Good morning, everyone, and welcome here at Sergel. My name is Mattias Vestman, and I work mainly with two things at Sergel. I work with business development, and I'm also responsible for our telecom customers and our partners, investment partners in buying debts. I have my colleague, David.
Yes, my name is David Nannini, Head of Product at Sergel.
So, we will give you some insights both into what we see is happening on the market. Hubert mentioned that, and I think we are all aware of the news recently, where we see banks struggling. There are some news about the potential recession in Sweden. We will give you some insights, what we see from a debt collection and debt purchase perspective. I think there are a lot of you here from banks today. We will also focus on what is happening in the debt sales market and the credit losses, and some of the impact we see from recent regulations. Looking at today's content, first shortly about us, and I think that will give you an insight in what we cover, and that has relevance. We actually work from the start of a sales process until the end. We will, as I said, give you some insight into market trends. What do we see is happening on especially the debt collection side and the debt purchase side, and how can you bring that then into your credit decision? So we will have some ideas and share some customer cases, both what kind of development we see on the market, but also how you can use data more efficiently. And last but not least, I will hand over to David, who will give you some ideas on how we work with analysis and things that you can bring in to your business, or how you can work with us. And maybe a challenge, but if anything is unclear, if you have questions, I would say don't hesitate to interrupt, or we can take them afterwards, of course. So firstly about Sergel, we've been in the business for a bit more than 30 years, and we are a pan-Nordic company, so we cover all the 4 Nordic countries. And what we do is, what we say that we help our customers from purchase to payment. So we cover the full credit management life cycle, from where you're starting sales with credit decision until the end. So this is an overview of the products we offer. So we start off in the beginning with credit decisioning. We have account receivables, and what we'll focus on today is mainly those two parts, the debt collection, the debt purchase, and the credit decision, how those can be interconnected, how you can use data from the later part of the process into enhancing your credit decisioning in the beginning. We also have messaging and payment services. We are one of the largest players when it comes to sending SMS messages in Sweden, send about 700 million. So I guess most of you have probably received a package from the Swedish Post. If you get an SMS, that's from Sergel. We handle that. So that's also part of our maybe the more fun part. We also actually work with, if you vote for Melodifestivalen, those kind of transaction, we pay for that. That's also a channel to Sergel. But we will stick with the more credit management part today. Looking at the debt collection, we have a possibility in what we are doing to get really early indicators. And when I say early indicators, that is that we handle debts for a very long time. So we have customers or former customers whose debts have been in our system for 1, 2, 10, 20 years. Those are the people that I would say struggle the most when we have more tough financial times. So we get really early indicators here. And what we have been seeing is kind of a shift in trends starting after the summer last year. First thing we saw was that the voluntary payments were going down. Not on fresh claims. We handle a lot of, for instance, telecom debts. Those are still really stable. Stable volumes, stable payments. But people that are in I would say, financial difficulties, that became a bit worse starting from August, September last year. And that has been, I would say, accelerating. And one of the key things that we are looking into and following up now is the bailiff, the Swedish Kronofogde. they did a record raise in what we call normalbeloppet, the amount people are left to live on. That was raised by 10% starting 1st of January this year. So we are now seeing lower cash flow from the legal collection part. So overall, still really stable when it comes to fresh debts, but when it comes to sold debts and debt that have been longer with us, we see a downward shift in cash flow. And this has been going on for a while, I would say, with an increasing debt situation. The debts that we send in to Kronofogden, to the bailiff, the average debt has really increased a lot. And we will show you some customer cases in a while here, where you can see the quite rapid growth in sold loans. And what does this mean then for, I don't know, how many here work with banks, by the way? A lot of you? Yeah, quite a few. So if we look at the trends of the debt purchase market, and debt purchase is something that I would say is really common in banking, in telecom, and in e-commerce. So when you reach a point of time when a loan is terminated or there is no longer a customer relation, a lot of our customers, a lot of the financial companies actually sell the debt. And prices have been really high in the last couple of years. If you're a bank, you have a terminated loan, you can usually sell it for 60, 70, sometimes even 80% of the remaining principal. So I think everyone understands then that is a really nice way of even if you have credit losses, they are much, much lower, considering that you're able to actually divest, to sell those debts on the market. So what have we been seeing now in the debt purchase market? First, you have the regulations, the NPL backstop. And for those who don't know it, NPL backstop means that banks are no longer allowed to keep terminated or unpaid loans in their books. They have to write them off completely after 3 years. So this has an impact, of course, on profits, but also that a lot of banks now are divesting or selling debts. So that is sort of number one. We also see higher interest rates. And from this perspective, I would say it mainly impacts, of course, the end customer, but also the investors. The companies buying debt, they need to finance that. And we see interest rate, well, I would say double or even now recently tripled compared to a few years back. So it becomes much, much more expensive to finance investments in NPLs. Just in the last, I would say, 3 to 6 months, we have seen several auctions in unsecured loans being cancelled. So the expectancy of what the banks or the telecom companies or the e-commerce companies are expecting to get from the loans that they are selling versus what the market is paying is not really met always. That was not the situation a few years back, but now some banks have even stopped selling debts for a while, just waiting and see where the market stabilizes and what price level it's going to be. Swedes, we are much more in debt compared to a few years back, but the loan portfolios have been growing, but the default rates have been really stable. I will show you on the next slide some of the development we have seen in our corporation. But overall, you could say that it remains to be seen. It's really early now, but the NPL backstop regulations, the interest rates, the default rates, all of that could mean that there's a lot more debt out on the market. So big potential for buyers, but we will see if there are enough buyers and if the price levels, if the expectations are met or not. This graph, I will explain it to you. These are 3 of the customers that we work with. We work with investment companies buying debt. So these are 3 examples. These are 3 banks, not startup banks. These have been in business for 10, 15, 20 years. And what we're seeing here is sold unsecured loans. So starting off in the 3rd quarter 2021, so a year and a half ago, index numbers. And what we measure here is the principal that they are selling, how many millions of SEK that they are selling. And I would say up until here, we saw an increase mainly driven by growth in their loan portfolios. So stable default rates, but a growing loan portfolio. What is happening here is a combination of those two. So these banks, they have been growing, but now they also see default rates going up. And I would say this is maybe, we'll see if this is an exception, but overall you could say that somewhere between 50 and 100% growth in sold unsecured loans. And overall, this puts a lot of more millions of SEK on the market. And the question is then, of course, what can you do about it? I wouldn't say that we have the a solution for everything, but what we would like to share with you is how you can actually use, if we're back to what Provenirs talked about, how can you use data even more efficiently? We will share a customer case here where we explain how you can actually use the data from this part into your credit decisioning. And the idea we have had is that you can segment what you sell in a much more detailed way. You can segment your products, you can segment your loans. If you have different brands, you can segment those to get a price for each of those segments. And the case I will show you on the next slide is how we used to work with a bank that had sort of one price fits all into a more segmented price model, and how they use that to bring that back into the credit decisioning. So in this example, the bank we work with, they were selling debts between 0 and 500,000 SEK, and we had one price for all those debts. What we developed together with them was a model with price tranches. And these are not the real prices, but I think they are still relevant because there's a strong correlation between debt size and price. The larger the debt, the lower the price. And in recent years, I would say, especially this segment, the really, really large unsecured loans are very difficult to collect, and the prices of them are sometimes really challenging to get on an accurate level. So what we did was developing this model where they took these prices back into the credit decisioning. And as you can see, the risk in granting a small loan is much smaller, of course, because you can sell it and you can get back most of your investment. And what they did was then, of course, to shift their lending, still offering the full range, but being a bit more cautious on the high tickets and granting more loans in the small ticket segment. And that increases their profitability. It took down the risk. And I would say banks are, in this sense, more early movers maybe, but it could also be applied for products or brands. So if you have different customer segments, different types of product that you are selling that are worth, that are priced differently in the debt sales, you can bring that back into your credit decisioning part to actually optimize your sales, lower your risk, and hopefully in the end, increase profits. So that kind of summarizes our view on the market and at least hopefully one tool that you can use to be more profitable.
Yeah.
Handing over to you then.
Thank you, Mattias. Yeah. So flip to the next, please. So just before rounding off, we have just a couple of things to show you. First, just to mention that we are a licensed credit information provider in Sweden. So we are one of the licensed providers in Sweden, not so well known amongst everyone, but we are one of the few players that have both credit data and the debt collection part. So that's what we do. We also have a pretty senior data scientist team that works with analytics for credit and also covering the whole chain from, like you were talking about, Mattias, from credit decisioning all the way to debt purchase, making sure that you make the right decisions based on what actually happens with the debts. And now is a good time as ever, given the default rates we're seeing, to have a look at your credit decisioning, right, Mattias? So we have a couple of examples to show you. So please flip to the next one. So this is from a non-banking customer that relies on a rather simple in a way credit decisioning with policy rule sets. And we had a look at what they do and the outcomes based on their main predictor, which is income that they use. So this is looking at income versus default rates in different regions of Sweden. And we see that maybe you would expect a rather kind of even situation here, but we saw that default rates were significantly higher in highly or more densely populated areas, such as Skåne and Stockholm. There's a bit of noise in the data as always, but the hypothesis here might be that, you know, it's a difference between having a 100K income in Stockholm compared to in Norrbotten. You just simply get more bang for the buck in different places. So just keeping an eye on the regional aspects in your decisioning. And to obviously, in a situation, the kind of situation we're in now, to monitor continuously what's happening. And also to have the kind of marketing and sales point of view here from two perspectives, just both looking at volumes, obviously what's happening. If you run, for instance, marketing campaigns in different parts of the country, you know, how does that impact volume? So not tying back the credit data back to sales, but also looking at those additional customers that you get in from a campaign. Do you have the same outcomes from those additional customers? Are they as good, or are they better, or are they worse than the customers you're used to? Just making sure you optimize your sales, looking at your credit data and your outcome data. So please flip to the next. Here again, same customer, again relying on this income parameter for prediction mainly. And we see that, as you would expect, income is a pretty robust predictor for most age groups. But for young adults, it's actually, there's a slightly negative correlation. It's a bit exaggerated here in this dummy data that we're showing, but you actually had a slightly negative correlation there. So just making sure that you're not using the kind of one-size-fits-all decisioning. And obviously, when you're young, you're a student, you're relying on student loans, etc. Income probably not such a good predictor of what's going to happen. Just continually monitor what's going on, but also consider customer lifetime value, right? So here you can see that default rates are a bit higher for the young guys, and that might be okay if those customers obviously have a higher lifetime value. You can see that those customers will then be repeat buyers, etc. It might make sense to have that, but just consider all of those aspects and bring it back jointly with your sales and marketing data to make sure that you're doing everything as optimized as possible. And tying back to that purchase as well, a write-off is not just a write-off. There's a difference if you can sell it for 80% on 100 or 20, etc. So that's just a quick kind of sample of what we do at Sergel, the type of analytics we do, and please feel free to talk to us about that if you want a second opinion or set up a new scoring model or that type of thing. We do that, and we have pretty good people engaged in that part.
Yeah.
So that was all for...
Yeah. So what we hope you bring with you is, of course, some insight in what is happening now, challenging times, but there are things to do, and especially with more data and more intelligent credit decisioning, you can prevent some of the losses that we are probably facing here. And working long time in debt collection, exciting times in one way, but challenging times. And we are really now cautious into finding solutions, because there are a lot of people now that are struggling with payments. So handling that in what we call a we care manner, finding sort of good solutions and long-term payment plans is really important. But still, we're probably going to see some big shifts in the debt sales market. And as I said, as long as the unemployment rate stays fairly stable, we're probably going to see stable recovery rates and stable volumes in the fresh debts. But if that changes, we're probably going to see a different market going forward in the coming years.
What we see in the current market situation today is that everybody knows inflation is going up, interest rates has gone up. It's become much more expensive for both consumer customers and also companies. And in today's market, we have tried to address some of these challenges. for people to obviously look at and how they serve their customer better by utilizing some services from our partners.
I would say with the changing and very volatile market, the trends, understanding them can help you both in predicting and forecasting what is going to happen, and also what kind of data you can use to minimize, for instance, credit losses. And I think it's really important right now to look at how you can optimize your customer intake, because it's going to be really challenging times for a lot of companies. So acting now is really, really important.
I think the way I have seen the event we have run today is fantastic. This is actually the first event Provenir has been running with our partners in Stockholm and also running it hybrid. And I think we had a lot of attendees here today of different nature, but I think we covered a lot of different elements very well.
I think it's really important to be more of a strategic partner to our customers. Both the credit decisioning and the debt collection and debt sales parts are fairly, I would say, they're fairly standardized processes in a lot of ways. With us adding more of analysis, in-depth knowledge and understanding, I think that it is key to make these sort of solutions, to bring them to a different level, but also being a strategic partner to our customers. I believe our cooperation with Provenir is really important for us. We cannot develop everything ourselves in-house, so having them as a partner where they enable us to use our data and our knowledge to deliver new products to customer, also in collaboration with other data partners, is really a key thing to bring the credit decisioning part to a new level in Sweden.
I think the cooperation with Sergel is actually rather new, but I must say everybody in Provenir are very, very pleased and excited about the cooperation we had so far. I can say that we have run this fantastic event in your location and fantastic logistics and planning, and I think also we have a very bright future together because we can work with each other to refer either our existing clients or potential new clients to each other. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.